Hi, friends. I have missed this. I have missed you, and I could not be more excited to be back doing these daily Bible reading videos together. And I couldn't be more excited about Revelation. If by day 4 you are still feeling a little bit trepidatious, a little bit intimidated, I wouldn't blame you. But I want to encourage you with the fact that I am just so in awe of this book. And I have been so encouraged by this literary masterpiece, right? It's complex, but the complexity offers us richness, and it's awe-inspiring to me. I hope you start to see that more and more. Today we're going to be reading from Revelation 3, and I want to talk specifically about the church in Sardis. John also addresses the church in Philadelphia and Laodicea in this chapter, but I just want to hone in on this first letter in chapter 3 and John's call to the church there to wake up. To wake up. If you look up pictures of the ancient city of Sardis, you will see that this is a city that is built in the hillside. They had these large peaks, and their fortress that was built on their Acropolis was known in ancient times for being pretty much an impenetrable fortress. Many nations and leaders had tried and failed to overtake Sardis because of their advantageous position up in the high elevation, until Cyrus of Persia. Now, as the story goes, Cyrus was having trouble overtaking the fortress like everyone before him, until one day when one of his Persian soldiers was watching the fortress and saw this guard, one of the guards from Sardis, who was watching the wall, and he had fallen asleep. And think about, when you fall asleep on a plane and your head kind of lolls around, right? You might jolt yourself awake because your head is bobbing. That's what happened to this soldier. He had fallen asleep guarding the wall, and his head was lolling around, and his helmet came off and tumbled down the mountainside. And he jerked awake and had to go get his helmet. So the story goes that he came out the mountainside through this secret door, and he scurried to grab his helmet and then scurried back in to retreat to safety. And the Persian soldier was watching, and so the damage was done, right? Cyrus and his army went through that secret door that they had just found out about at nightfall, and while the citizens were all asleep, they overtook the city of Sardis, even though nobody had been able to before. This isn't just a cultural story. This is something that John is playing off of in this letter. Because John is saying to this church in Sardis, you have become like your city. Instead of being vigilant like you need to be, you have fallen asleep. You've fallen asleep, and while you have been asleep, sin is starting to come in through the back door, through the secret entrance down the mountain. I don't know if this is something that you can relate to, but it's something that I can relate to. We do not become more Christ-like naturally, right? I don't trend in the direction of Christ-likeness without being vigilant. I have to be awake to become more Christ-like. And when we start to be lulled into a false sense of security, when we start to feel complacent, when we start to put our hope and find security in things other than God, even if they're good things like our jobs, our paychecks, our relationships, our families, what have you, if we aren't vigilant about our pursuit of Christ-likeness, if we get lulled to sleep by the things of this world, sin can come in through the back door. That's what's happening to the church in Sardis. But it doesn't happen to everybody in Sardis. If you caught this towards the end of the letter, the tone shifts. And John says to the church in Sardis, a few of you still have not soiled your garments. Right? Jesus says to the church, you faithful remnant, you will walk with me in white, for you are worthy. Who is this faithful remnant? Well, in Sardis each year, amongst the many gods, the pagan gods that they worshipped, one was called Kibbalah. And they would worship Kibbalah in a festival each March. And it was a festival that was just filled with debauchery. And the pinnacle of the festival was this gruesome expression of worship where male devotees would go to the temple to Kibbalah, and they would be dressed in white robes, and as a symbol of their devotion to her, apologies for the gruesomeness, but they would castrate themselves. And in their thinking, that sacrifice counted for them and anybody around them who had also been covered in their blood. Gory, I know. But are connections starting to form in your head? Connecting that image, sad as it may be, to our faith? And there were these faithful Christians in Sardis who, in response to this Kibbalah worship, built a hospital outside her temple for these male devotees who had sacrificed to come and be healed and comforted and cared for. Isn't that incredible? I cannot imagine a better image of being awake in a city that is asleep, being light in a city that is full of darkness, being a force for healing in a city that is broken and perpetuating its own brokenness, chasing after gods who cannot comfort or bring security or love. And so Jesus, through John, says to this faithful remnant in Sardis, you faithful remnant, you're awake. You realize that I am the only one who deserves your devotion. That goddesses and gods like Kibbalah can't give it to you. You realize that the only blood that can make you clean, that can make you white as snow, is mine. And the call to the church in Cyrus is for them collectively to be more like this faithful remnant. This faithful group that is devoted to Jesus and is motivated by that devotion to go be a light to their city that is broken. So for you and I today, are we awake? Are we awake? It is so easy for us to put our trust in the wrong things, to get complacent in our spiritual lives, to fall asleep and let sin come in the back door. But in a world that is still full of brokenness, is still full of people who are perpetuating their own brokenness, who are in self-destruct mode, right? Who go chasing after the wrong things, we have the opportunity to go be life in the midst of death, to go be light in the midst of darkness, to go bring healing to the broken. Are you and I awake? The promise that Jesus gives to these Christians in Sardis who are faithful is that one day he will acknowledge them as his own before the Father. May you and I stay awake. May we stay devoted. May we be lights. And may we put our hope and fix our eyes on that future day when we will be with Jesus and he will acknowledge us as his own before the Father. I couldn't imagine a more beautiful thing to hope for than that. So good. Take care, friends. I will see you next time.